Hello! This video shows step by step how to replace shocks on your car. My patient today is Audi 4000. I will first talk about what bolts and nuts need to come out, and then I will go over the parts that you need to order for this job, and then I'll show step by step how I do it and comment along the way. This is the strut tower. It will need to be deinstalled completely and put on a table. So I will deinstall the strut, compress the spring, remove the shock absorber, install the new shock absorber, put the spring back on, and then put it all back on the car. If there are people with not a lot of experience, I really hope that you'll bear with me till the end of this video. I know I'm using a lot of words already, but it's because I'd like this video to be for new people also. That's why it's not a 1-minute time-lapse video. And if you need to know what those part names mean, there are a lot of videos on suspension on YouTube, and I'll pick out a good one, link it in the description below, so help yourself. I feel like those videos are good for people who want to learn cars and English language. I feel like that's what I'm trying to do. You really want to change shocks in pairs. It means that if you're changing one rear shock, you really want to change the other rear shock as well. That's because usually if one of your shocks is going bad, the shock on the other side of the car is going bad soon also. That way, you know, your shocks are wearing off at the same time after you replace them, and your car is straighter, which is important for safety, especially if you like to drive fast. You can replace only one shock. It's not recommended. And in the perfect world, you want to replace the springs at the same time, but that varies. By the way, changing shocks in the rear of a front-wheel drive car is easier in my opinion, but it's also different from changing the front shocks. So I'll post a video on how to do rear shocks soon on this channel. Once I do that, I'll link that video in the description. To change 2 shocks on your car, you will need 2 new shock absorbers, 2 bellows. They are rubber boots that cover the shock and keep the dirt out. They're also called sleeves. and 2 new strut mounts. They're also called strut bearings. This is the axle nut. The caliper holds on with 2 bolts. It has to come off next. I'm gonna put in a hook in the wheel well. That way I can hang the caliper so I don't have to unscrew the brake line, so I don't have to bleed the brakes once I'm done with this job. I use an old screwdriver to press out the brake pads so that the caliper is not clipped on the rotor anymore. So I use the screwdriver as a lever, and I kind of lean it on the rotor and press against the brake pads. It was hard to film that, so I'm kind of just going to show the parts of the brake pads that are visible that you press out for the caliper to be released. Then the ball joint retaining bolt comes out to release the lower control arm from the strut, and then the tie rod end nut. I'm gonna use a special tool to press out the tie rod end. It's called all kinds of things. Tie rod end splitter, ball joint separator, like that. Never hammer the tie rod end. Most likely you're gonna mess it up and won't be able to drive the car away. Then you unscrew the nut that holds the top of the shock, or the top of the strut, if you will, to the car. The very top piece above the nut is the actual shock itself, and you need to prevent it from spinning while you're turning the nut. It looks like this shock needs some kind of specific tool specific to this shock. I don't have it, so this is how I did it. The new shock I'll put in will have an L wrench opening at the top. It's a lot easier to work with, and most new shocks are like that. So the spring inside the strut is under tension. It's pressing outwards. So as soon as you remove the top nut, it's going to shoot out with a huge force. I don't know, it'll break some bones. Maybe it can kill you. So that's why we need the compressor tool. It's generally a pretty safe procedure if you have that tool, as long as the spring stays inside the ridges of the compressor tool retainers. I'll show that. It looks like to remove the top nut, I need some kind of Volkswagen tool. It's probably expensive. I probably wouldn't use it that often, so I don't have it. You'll see how I go about it. Once that nut and the shock spring retainer are out, I'm going to put the shock upright in order to remove the top threaded cap of the shock. that the shock has been replaced and the cab has been torqued at 150 Newton meters. It's time to put it all back together. And now you can see why we needed new strut mounts. There isn't really a way to torque that top nut without that VW tool, so you have to be kind of careful here. It needs to be pretty tight but not over tightened. You should be able to feel it with your hand, and the hammer I'm using might look intense, but you should be able to see that I'm tapping it really gently. If you're slamming it, then you're over tightening it, and you may not be able to take it off when you need to a few years down the road without having that BW tool on top of that. The nylock at the top of the strut just loosely, so the strut kind of hangs off of it. And now you'll need to fit the lower control arm back together with the strut tower. It's helpful to use a crowbar to bend down the lower control arm and kind of push the strut upwards at the same time. It's not that hard, but it always takes me a minute. Once that's done, you can fit the tie rod end back in, no tightening yet, and then you can tighten the top nylock fully. I just make the nylock tight. You can see some torque ratings in the first picture that I included in the video. Here are some more torque ratings for you if you're working on a car like mine or similar. You need to find torque ratings for your specific car though from an official repair manual for your car. That sound. Yeah. Where did he go? Dude, you're gonna die there. Oh, it doesn't like the light. It's running away from the light. Dude, like, I have to get you out though. And don't not torque these bolts.